Aloha everybody, this is Beau Hawkes here, coming with the exclusive interview. I've got Tim Hurley from the Honolulu Star Advertiser on the line, and we're going to tell a story of what surrounded the events leading up to and directly following the police chase video. So go ahead, Tim, if you had some questions. Yeah, the morning, Wednesday, I was on my way to a GMO moratorium public testimony meeting. It was taking place down at the 8th floor, the county building there on Wells Street in Maui. And so I was on my way down there from upcountry where I live, and I was pulled over by an officer. And I happened to be on the phone with my ex-wife at the time. I finished up my conversation with her and set the phone down and pulled over. And a police officer approached the vehicle and said he had pulled me over because I didn't have a license plate on my vehicle. And yes, this was one on Haleakala Highway. And so the police officer said that I was talking on my cell phone and that I didn't have a license plate on my vehicle. And I said, I realized both of those things were true, that I didn't need a license plate in order to drive my private vehicle around, that I was an individual private person that was informed about my rights and didn't participate in the corporate America system that we get involved with every time we register a vehicle or pay a tax return or pay a ticket, that's differentiated with the all capital letters as opposed to the real us that's capital first letter, lowercase rest of the letters, first and last name. So the police officer asked me if I had identification on myself, and I told him that I did not, that furthermore, I did not need any paper of identifying papers to carry myself around anywhere in the world as I choose to, so long as that I obeyed one law, the law of nature, nature's law, also known as God's law. How's it? Come and sit down and just do an interview, so I can talk to you and be more relaxed. So if you want to come hang out over here.
You doing an interview?
Yeah. So, yeah, Tim, a friend just showed up. And so the police officer, after hearing what I told him, he said, "Sir, can you turn your vehicle off? You're making me kind of nervous." And I said, "I'm actually late for a meeting down at the courthouse, and I got to get going." And so I drove off, and in a calm manner, not fast, but just calm. It's not my first time I've done that. And I witnessed the officer running back to his car like he was going to pursue me in a fast manner. And he jumped in his car and, in fact, turned his lights on and started a police chase down the highway. It only lasted less than a half of a mile before I saw him in the side view mirror pull over, and I figured he'd radioed into dispatch and they told him not to pursue during rush hour traffic. And so I headed on down to the meeting and went up and parked my car. I chose to park it where I always park it, is in a pay in the parking stall, and I don't pay. And then when they give me a ticket, I don't pay it because I don't participate. And I, like everyone else, has these rights that are bestowed upon us by our Creator. The Declaration of Independence outlines these rights. Yes, sir? Okay. Is this any better? Is this any better? Okay, I took you off speakerphone. It's going to impact the quality of the video, but hey, it is what it is, and we're doing this here. So I appreciate you, Tim. So yeah, so to be clear, I'm standing on the Declaration of Independence. That's why I don't have a license plate. That's why I don't have a driver's license. That's why I don't pay taxes. And everybody has this right that I'm talking about. The fact that I've found myself called into the calling of running for mayor of Maui, the whole series of events is divinely inspired. You couldn't write this stuff. The Maui mayor running down the street getting tased. It's part of something that's special, and I call that the revolution. And it's kind of like what they did in the 60s and 70s about the love and the peace and oneness, and kind of that inspired awareness and raised consciousness. And it's happening again right now. And so we're calling that the revolution. That's a peaceful revolution. And it's based on a simple principle that we know here in Hawaii all too well. One word, pono, which means to do what is right. We here in Hawaii understand that principle. And we, in a large part, guide ourselves that way. And the rest of the world responds to us in a way where they acknowledge and accept and come and to be part of that aloha that comes from living in a ho'opono way. And so that's what's important that we understand here. I'm not a lunatic. I am a hippie. Jesus was a hippie. And I love running around barefoot because it keeps me literally connected to the electromagnetic frequency of the earth, which allows my consciousness to evolve at a greater rate than if I were to wear rubber-soled shoes that literally insulate me from that connection. So, back to the story of what I was doing. I came out of the building. I had gone up to the GMO public speaking. I got my name on the list. I got there 45 minutes early, and there was still over 60 people in front of me. And so I knew that I had quite a few hours of testimony before I would get to speak. And so I decided I would leave and go run some errands. As I was walking across, just as I left the sidewalk in front of the building and stepped onto the crosswalk, a police car lunged forward and abruptly parked in front of me with the lights flashing. And the officer, the same officer who pulled me over earlier, jumped out of the car and told me to freeze, that I was under arrest. At which point, I put my hands up in the air and I said, "What am I under arrest for?" He's demanding me to put my hands behind my back. Keep in mind, I'm asking, it is my right to ask the executive force, what law are you enforcing? After all, it is I, the people, the legislative branch, the ones who enact the laws that can check the executive branch, which is the police force. He says you're under arrest for resisting arrest, which is not true in any way, shape, or form. I had not been detained. I was free to leave. I had immediately stopped and put my hands in the air when I was told that I was under arrest to put my hands in my back. I believe that's what he was referring to. Later on in the day, I got to talk and get to know this gentleman and know that he's a good man. And I applauded him for his diligence in carrying out his responsibility as a police force of fighting out the crime. We also understood that I'm no criminal and I had broken no laws. At the end of the day, all I received was traffic citations. Again, citations for the corporate law system, which I don't take any part of. So I will stand on my constitutional and my Declaration of Independence rights outlined stated very clearly what our entire Bill of Rights is based on, that there was no jurisdiction over me, and therefore none of these citations are valid. They will all be dismissed, which will set a precedence for the rest of the world. Even my community thinks I'm a lunatic for driving around with no license plates. And we learned something through the ordeal, that it's not enough to take off the license plate. We have to put something else on it. And so we put private on it. And private means no contract. That means we are independent, and so we will write private and or independent where our license plates are. And this will notify the authorities that we are an informed part of the legislative branch that holds them in check and will not be pulling people over and tasing them in the middle of the street. I'm happy to be the guy to take the beating, to show the people what the truth is. So the police officer told me to freeze. I was under arrest. I said, what for? He said, for resisting arrest. I said, I'm not resisting. If you have any questions for me, I'm happy to answer them. I'll be happy to sit down here with you. I'm not going anywhere. I'm here. You have my attention. He said, turn around, put your hands behind your back. I said, sir, I've done nothing wrong here. You can't just tell me to put my hands behind my back when I haven't broken any laws. I said, I'm sitting here and I'll talk to you. At this point, the officer's coming towards me. I'm continuing to back up about the time the film starts and the police officer's grabbing a hold of my hand. I'm looking at this officer grabbing my hand, seeing that he's becoming more and more aggressive. This officer is 300 plus pounds. And I go into instinct mode. Another gift that my Creator has given me and every other manner of nature in creation. And that is the gift of fight or flight. And I chose flight. And that is to get myself away from that situation that might get me harmed. And so I took off and ran for a few steps away from him until I had a significant amount of room that I could turn around and see him. And I turned around and he was still coming at me. At which point I stepped around the side of him and he was behind me again. I heard him yell twice, stop, I'm going to tase you, stop, I'm going to tase you. At about the time that I'm understanding he's going to tase me, the taser hits me squarely in the back and paralyzes me. And my spine becomes erect and my hands become stiff. And I land just out of frame. Thank God my kids didn't have to see their dad land on that asphalt. But we saw the feet. And I prayed, as I hit the ground, I prayed that officer would come and take this thing off of me before it would kill me. It was that kind of a pain. And it was something that is unconstitutional and inhumane in every shape and form of the word. Absolutely. Maui Police Department will show the world and set the precedence to be the first police department that I know of to ban the use of taser guns. Absolutely. So then I'm there waiting for the officer to come to my rescue now. This public servant, this elected official, to help me to turn this thing off. And he turned it off, and I could have kissed him at that moment. This is, I'm sharing this so you can understand at what level this taser takes it to. How many volts is it? 20,000? 20,000 volts hitting you square in the heart chakra from behind. I'll tell you one thing that I gained is I got some of my heart chakra blockage removed. And I can still feel the sensation around my entire solar plexus area of where I can still feel the sensation I wouldn't call it a pain or discomfort, but it's a full sensation, that almost like if you become full when you eat food, about my whole solar plexus area. So as this was happening, and they told me put my hands behind my back, I put my hands directly behind my back, and they turned the thing off. And then the 300-pound officer is on top of me, telling me to quit resisting. I'm saying over and over, I'm not resisting, I haven't done anything. And I think that was clear in the video, that I was communicating with this officer in a peaceful, non-aggressive manner. And another officer quickly joined and also started putting his weight. And now I have over 500 pounds smashing down on me. And just in the news that same week, we've seen 2 gentlemen die because of standard-by camera footage, and in one case, GoPro footage from a police helmet, of police using unnecessary force to kill men. And I told these officers this. I told them they were going to kill me, that I wasn't resisting and to please stop. And the secondary officer was twisting my wrist in a way to where he thought I was resisting. He had twisted it so far that my bones and my tendons wouldn't go any further without breaking. And I told him, you're about to break my wrist. Please let go. I'm not resisting. And they picked me up, and they dragged me, and they set me down on this concrete wall, and right then the film ends. And just moments after that, as I stood up, full of high on electricity like I can't describe to you. Certainly high on electricity. We are electromagnetic beings, and I got zapped with a high voltage pulse of that. And absolutely, my entire electromagnetic system was elevated. When they took my blood pressure, it was 130. When they took my heartbeat, it was 90 strong. That was after I had calmed myself down after the entire ordeal. But just after that video stopped, I was tackled by the officer back into the grass. Yeah, when I stood up. I stood up. I stood up. And the officer, I believe it was the secondary officer, and there's eyewitnesses and there is police report, that I was tackled over backwards into the grass and had a 250-pound officer's forearm across my neck, smashing me into the ground. And then I told him again, I haven't done anything. You guys quit doing this. And they picked me up and sat me down again. So there was many police officers on the scene. 5, 6, 7 different police officers showed up. Captain had to show up because they had somebody down there who knew what he was talking about, who wasn't just going to jump just because they said jump, and didn't react in the way that they're trained. I got to ask this gentleman, this arresting officer, how long he'd been on the force. One of the few questions he would answer was 3 years. And he's been trained by his trainers and seen on TV and on Facebook police brutality. And we see it across the world. And we're at a point where a story like this comes on, and I'm reading on Maui Now, on my computer screen in front of me. Somebody says, what a nutcase, he deserved to get tased. Who would want this candidate to represent Maui? What an idiot. And people are misinformed to that level. I should say, have been misinformed to that level. Because we are all waking up. And we all know what's happening. This revolution is happening whether we choose to step on board or not. And this event is a catalyst in that. we will see in the future hours and days the world hear about this. And they'll hear about this and they will watch Maui respond to this. And Maui and Hawaii has the opportunity to be that example. That they know, the Kanaka Maoli know that that is their destiny. That is their prophecy. That they are to remain here warring amongst themselves until the change comes, until the shift happens. And that's when the collective consciousness of the humans evolves in such a way that we are no longer self-serving individuals, but we are higher serving, other serving oneness. That we serve to be part of a higher one entity, one organism. I liken it to the cells that make up our body. We are the cells that make up the universe. And we as humans happen to be the only talking animal on Earth, and we also happen to be the only animal on Earth that is out of harmony with nature. And that is the shift that we're talking about, is that we come in harmony with nature. They wanted to get me out of there. They wanted to get me to the police station. And I said that you guys look at me, I'm cut up head to toe. We need to get these cleaned out or I'm going to develop staph infection. Yes, and I do have a staph infection. I think that the cuts occurred out of frame, most of them. And what I mean by that was when my body was paralyzed and landed forcefully on the pavement, going from a running momentum to a sudden stop. That's brutal. That is exactly what the word I would use is brutal. Yeah, I'm in the water a lot in Maui. I'm a surfer, and staph is no big secret here. Immersive staph, one of the worst kinds, the kind that exists in a hospital that can exist in a sterile environment, is the stuff that actually we all have in us. And whenever situations are correct, we can have an outbreak, and that outbreak can kill us. And so I've had to call my doctor and order a prescription for the drugs to kill the staph infection. So I asked that I could clean my cuts out. The police said that they did not have any cleaning or first aid kit available in the car. And so that they would have to call an ambulance if we were going to clean me up. And I said, okay. So the ambulance showed up, and they asked me, the first thing they asked me was, how do I feel? And I said that I'm high as hell on 20,000 volts of electricity. I have no idea how I feel. And they looked me over, and then they said there's nothing they could do with me, and that they were leaving. And I asked them, and they were trying to put me back in the cop car. And I said, hey, you guys are just going to leave? You didn't even clean my cuts up. They said, oh, we can't clean cuts up. We're not equipped for that. We're only equipped to save your life. And I was getting kind of an attitude from this guy. And I said, do you mean to tell me that you don't have some peroxide that I could clean my wounds out with? He said, no, we don't. I said, do you have some soap and water? He said, no, we don't. I said, do you mean to tell me 2 paramedics showed up to deal with this situation? Taxpayer dollars is paying these guys. And there was a guy that got brutally ground into the asphalt for doing nothing except exercising his constitutional rights. And they didn't, our ambulance that they probably pay in the hundreds of thousands of dollars for didn't have soap or water to clean a wound out to prevent a staph infection in developing, which it did. Because from there, we went back to the police station, and they proceeded to start booking me. And again, I said, I've got to get these cuts cleaned out. They said, well, we can't administer any medical aid to you here. And I said, I can use a soap and water in the bathroom. And they said, no, if you want any medical attention, you're going to have to go up to the hospital. And so the officer said he was going to take me up. And he decided, they wouldn't let me use soap and water in the bathroom. That's right. I didn't ask to use the restroom in a way that, but they said, no, I could not do that. They didn't have anything there that I could do that with. And so they said, well, we're going to send you up to the emergency room. So the officer, before he took me to the emergency room, he said, I'm going to shackle the inmate. And the other officer said, okay. And the guy went and got some shackles and put them around my ankles. These dirty metal shackles on my feet where have just been torn open and dirt ground into them. And if anyone's, this is not my first time wearing a pair of shackles. When I was 20 years old, I was arrested for possession of methamphetamines. And I've been addicted at 18 years old and 20 years old to methamphetamines, which I thank God for that opportunity. It gives me the insight to know how to approach that problem here in Hawaii, having been there. I'm 34 years old now. I've also been homeless on Maui. In the last year, I've had the opportunity to learn what it's like to be homeless. Never thought that that would be anything that I ever had an opportunity to do. And believe me, my ex-wife was not proud of me, and my children were neither. But a series of circumstances outside of my control led to my homelessness. Not once, but twice on Maui. So I can feel, I've been there. These are my friends. No, I'm not homeless now. Thank you for asking. I'm not homeless now. Willing to be again, no problem. To gain that perspective is priceless. That wisdom gained through maintaining a positive attitude during all that. But the police officer shackled me, and he led me up to the emergency room's not far from the police station, so it's just a few minute ride up to the emergency room, and he walked me in there, and we filled out the paperwork, and they asked, what I was in there for. I said I'd been grounded into the cement. They said, do you have any allergies? I said, I'm horribly allergic to GMO foods, that my body evacuates when GMO food goes inside of me, and which tears up my intestinal tract. And so does it to everybody else I know, even though we don't really talk about it, because it's not PC to really talk about who. But that's how we can judge how healthy we are. And I'm not ashamed to talk about it. And I'm privileged to open up the conversation to the rest of the world about what does your poo look like. Because mine didn't look right, and it had worms in it. And when I started Googling about what that was, I realized that millions and millions of people had that same problem. And so it was with this information that I was inspired to go and share at the GMO testimony meeting that led to the story developing that we're on the phone about right now. Again, this is all God's hand. I'm happy to play my part, happy to face plant, happy to be here sharing it with the world. And so as I'm sitting in the hospital, of course not treated. It takes hours and hours to get treated in the emergency room. And plus, there was all kinds of people with a lot more serious conditions than myself. One guy was just rolled in there right after me. My heart went out to him. I just wanted to wash my cuts, but I was forced to sit there and watch this man scream in pain, saying his was on a scale of 10. His skin yellow, his stomach huge and stretched from a surgery that he had just gone through days before at that very hospital. And my cuts started to sting. And I started to feel and notice the bacteria floating around in the hospital that I know is there. And I felt the air blowing on me, and I felt the infection taking hold. I can feel that. We can feel that happen to us if we pay attention.
I feel it.
And I told the officer this was happening and I needed to leave. We just needed to go find some water somewhere. At that point, I was willing to just do it in a hose bib on the side of the building. And so he called his superior and they said, okay, that's fine. Let's go let him wash up in the sink in the police station. So by that time, the shackles had really started digging in and my pain was starting to really come on. And the effects of the tasing had really started to affect me to where I asked the police officer if he would remove the shackles, that I wasn't able to even take just several steps without being in a huge amount of pain. He said, no, I'm not going to. He said, you ran. That's why I shackled you. He was going to get me for shackling him, for running on him. And I said, man, I didn't run. You chased me. I didn't do anything. This didn't have to go like this. But I love you just the same. And he said he wouldn't take my shackles off, so I asked him if I could please get in this wheelchair, of which there was 3 sitting behind him, that I wasn't able to walk, and if he was unable to take my shackles off of my ankles, then if I could please get a push on the wheelchair, of which there's plenty. In which I see the man coming back now with the empty wheelchair, willing to push me. And you tell me no. And put on his rubber glove and forcibly moved me out of that hospital waiting room. And as I walked out, and I bent down to pick up trash, like I often do, he asked me, what are you doing? I said, I'm picking up the trash, man. How do you think that Mother Nature is going to pick the trash up? She didn't put it there. I didn't put it there. You didn't put it there. But we have the ability, we have hands and thought and reasoning to where we can pick it up. So I pick it up, man. Of course. You arrested the guy running for mayor who picks trash up. Nice job. You guys did it. And I asked them what they wanted to say as a comment. And they said, we have no comment. Okay. So we go back to the police station. And they bring me in. He removes my shackles. I encourage the arresting officer that I love him and I harbor no feelings of animosity towards him in any way. And we start the booking procedure. They show me the sink in the corner of the room, a dingy, small sink with some foam hand soap that comes out. And he gave me 4 paper towels and he said, there you go. I said, do you want me to stick my foot in the sink? He said, I don't know. Sure, I guess. I said, I don't have a problem sticking my foot in the sink. I just want to be clear. This is what we're doing right now. You guys have the mayor in here beat up like this. You're making him wash his foot in the sink. Just to be clear. He said, yeah. I said, all right. Happy to do that. So I scrubbed the cuts out. And we were able to get some free Band-Aids from the hospital, although they weren't allowed to administer so much as a piece of tape or a piece of gauze. They do give away Band-Aids, and I do want people to know that. They can ask for Band-Aids. And so I bandaged myself up, and the officer said I had a $300 bail. And I said, okay, well, can I use my phone to call somebody? He said, sure. So I called a friend, and they were on their way. And so they led me to a cell after taking all my belongings and making inventory and the normal things of being processed. They sat me in the cell, gave me a blanket and a small paper cup, and said, here you go. And I sat in there alone, and didn't know where to sit. I knew I was wide open with cuts. And I thought about the men in there wide open with cuts that didn't get to clean theirs out in the sink and didn't get Band-Aids on them. And I looked around at the walls and I saw the filth and the grime. Looked in the corners and I saw the unspeakable filth in a jail cell in Maui County. One of the most beautiful places in the world. And I was able to empathize with those brothers and sisters who get caught up in the same system that I was part of. And again, I'm happy to be that example. Because at the end of the day, they had me down for 7 counts of traffic citations, all of which fall under the corporate courtroom of which I don't participate in, and therefore they arrested me for no reason. That's going to serve as a precedent and an incentive for the Pono thing to happen here. See, we don't want to do anything to the police, but inspire them to be Pono. And we're going to inspire our law books with laws that are Pono. And we're going to do that by creating online petitions and gathering 2/3 of the votes and enacting laws. And we're going to circumvent crooked representatives that we've allowed to make those choices for us. With the power of the media and the power of the internet, we have this ability to shut them down. And to shut them down, I mean the corrupt parts of our government and our society and our corporations that are all one. So I'm in this cell. I decided I would just lay down and I just would meditate and just be in that cell and learn everything I could from being in that cell. And I'll tell you what, after about 3 hours in that cell, my ears were perking up any little sound I heard, ready to get out. And about 2:30 in the afternoon, they came and got me and said, okay, you're out. And a sweet lady that I'd never met before, that had showed up and been the vehicle to bring the $300 down so that I could post my own bail. And she came and dropped me off at my truck up at the scene of the incident. And she said, so you didn't even get to speak at the GMO meeting? I said, I don't know, I'm going to run up there and see. And I run up there, and they were just getting to me. I waited about 5 minutes, and I happened to have in the breast pocket of my shirt that day some studying material that I've been trying to familiarize myself with. I figure if I'm running for mayor, I better know what I'm talking about. And so I've got a pocket edition of the Constitution of the United States, and it also has the Declaration of Independence in that. And when I went sliding across the asphalt that morning, I literally slid across with the Declaration of Independence on my chest. And I had worn a hole right through the cover of it. And so when it was my chance to speak, I said what I always say, and that's whatever is natural and unrehearsed, that I appreciated everybody's testimony about the GMO moratorium and awareness that GMOs are killing us. But I didn't want to focus on that one issue, that I wanted to share some information on the underlying issue. And that is a corrupt government system. And so I took the Declaration of Independence out of my pocket and I read for 2.5 minutes. The Declaration of Independence. Yes. And I thought that was important for our county council members to hear. And as I saw some of them literally squirming in their seats, and I was able to look at them and they knew their time was over. And they welcomed this because these are good guys in our community. And they don't want to be part of a corrupt system anymore. They're out there trying to fight crime and end up being part of it. And we the people owe it to them to free them of that. Nothing else eventful happened after that pertaining to that particular scene, that particular event. This is part of a bigger network of things happening, and that is of a bee pono movement, and that is a BEE. It's the insect bee. That bee. Yeah, thank you for seeing that. And that is the campaign website, beepono.us, because it is about us. It is not about competition, but it is about us working together and thinking as one and creating new paradigms and systems by which to live. And so we can simply take the beepono message and apply it to everything in our society, from our government and our law systems, to our schools, to our food and water, to our energy, to our medical. You name it, we apply beepono to it. And then there is plenty and abundance and togetherness and love. And that is what the Re-Love-ution is about. Yes, I have an August 21st court date for the 7 citations. I'll read those. Just a moment. I'll get my ticket here and read it, just so there's no confusion. Okay, actually, this is my bail. Court date, August 21st, 10:30 a.m., Wailuku District Court. And as I'm reading here, I do see that they do have a resisting arrest charge and obedience to police. So the resisting arrest charge is 710-1026. And the arrest citation number is 14-31407-001. The bail is $200. And then the obedience to police is I can't read the statutory section, but the report number is, or the arrest report citation number. We need to get this information out there. Thanks, Tim, for letting me say this. Is 14-031407-002, and that has a $100 bail. Yeah, the arresting agency is the MPD. State ID booking number is 14-04268. And then, go ahead. That court date of August 21st is for those 2 charges. Okay, and then the traffic has no court date. Okay, so what I'll be doing is the option to deny contest by written statement. It says if you submit a written statement explaining the grounds of which you contest the infractions, include your name, address, operator, license number, citation number, and signature on the statement. When you submit a written statement with your answer to notice, no hearing will be scheduled. You will be notified by mail of the judge's decision. If you disagree with the judge's decision, you may request a trial. So again, I will be contesting with a written statement standing on my Declaration of Independence, the rights outlined in that, and the Constitution of the United States and Bill of Rights. That's it. We're just going to go right to that high law, because we know we stand on that. And then they gave me, I believe, 7 infractions. HRS 249-2, delinquent vehicle tax. HRS 249-7B, no license plate rear. HRS 286-25, no certificate of inspection. HRS 286473, no certificate of registration in vehicle. HRS 286-11 6A, no license on person. HRS 249-7B, no front license plate. HRS 291C-137A, talking on the cell phone. So I'll be contesting. Yeah, they passed a law without the consent of the people, just through the elected officials that clearly do not have our best interest in mind. And they passed a law of not talking on the cell phone or texting. And it's about a $300 fine that they get thousands of people every month with tickets for. That's a mandatory by the judge. So this is a money scheme for talking on the cell phone. And I agree that there is a time and a place to talk on a cell phone. I just don't agree that the government has a chance to enact a law without the consent of the people. That's my problem. Because we know that if we're hostile on the phone or drawn into another conversation where we're not giving the attention that the road deserves, then we can become short-sighted and cause injury to others around us, including ourselves. This is not what we want to do, nor do we want to get in a screaming match with our riding companion. I know I've been guilty of that, getting upset with the person sitting next to me. So a law that says we can't have a cell phone because of that reason that we might lose our attention on the road is just like saying talking to your passenger, or excuse me, not passenger, but talking to your companion there it should be illegal, which is not. We need to use our discernment. We are smart individuals. We know what is right and what is wrong, and we know what that is called pono. Well, let's not say sorries. I'm certainly not sorry it happened to me. I wouldn't be on the phone right now talking to you if it didn't happen. And as they say, any publicity is good publicity. But certainly not after publicity, after change, and that change comes in the way of solutions only. I cannot and do not focus on problems. They have consumed my life for the past who knows how many years, and they scare everybody from looking at them. The only way that people can look at a problem without it overloading them and killing them, if they're not ready, is if they have a solution for it. So we have to implement solutions before we can start really waking people up to the problems. Because let's get it straight. If everybody woke up tomorrow and didn't eat any GMO food, there wouldn't be enough food on this island to last 2 days. So the focus is not that of we don't want GMO food, but the focus is that of we need real food. Yes, I had a friend inspire me to be in the race. It was actually just on the first meeting of this friend, and they had actually expressed some interest of wanting to run for a community leader event, county council, mayor, something like that. And I had reached out to them via Facebook and said, hey, here's my 2 cents. I wish you the best. This is what we need. Thank you for doing this. And followed it up with a message asking her if she would like to be part of a think tank, some kind of a scenario where we can sit down and talk about solutions and really map them out and get them into the arena of the leaders that we have in our community. And so she said, yeah, I can come over today, actually. I said, great, come over. She came over, and we sat down and talked, and I admittedly did most of the talking. She said, hey, have you ever considered running for mayor? And I said, no. No? Are you kidding me? Run for mayor? She says, well, if you did, I'd vote for you. And I thought about it for just a few minutes, and I'm able to reflect and go within and ask myself with my own discernment if this is true, what I should do. Okay, this is how I can talk to God. That is to talk to my higher self, my spiritual self, which is an extension of God, or part of God, however it is you understand it. And God is interchangeable with universe, or force, or spirit, or creator. And I knew right away that was my calling. And I said, you know what, I might just do that. And she said, well, I think it's getting pretty close, but I think you could still go down and pull papers. And I looked up online, and I saw that I was just, I was on an Aloha Friday, and I found myself down there running in barefoot into right across that same crosswalk where the incident took place. And I kind of looked up at God, looked up and kind of smiled at myself running for mayor. And went and was able to pull the papers on that Friday, gather the nomination signatures by going out and talking to people. Talked to my friends, and of course got a lot of signatures. Not a lot of them were validated because they throw a lot of signatures out if they're just not proper. But I was able to go and walk the streets in Wailuku town and talk to every single person I met. And I talked to people that worked for the federal government, and I talked to people who worked for the coroner, and everywhere in between. And everyone I talked to, and I told them what I was doing, that I was going to start the revolution, and that I was going to run for mayor, and we were going to start implementing true and correct principles and rebuild our government, rebuild our local society, and be an example to the world. Every single person said, you got my vote, buddy. And I was able to get those votes and get them turned in. And it's just been a really blessing. I'm really honored and humbled to find myself in this arena. You're welcome, Tim, and thank you. Absolutely, and please send me over an email of the recording today. Right, and then if you're going to develop a story from here, can you send me a link to that story? Are you guys going to be on TV, or are you going to be online? Okay, send, if you could please. It's BEAUHOX as in X-ray @gmail.com. Alrighty? Alright, thanks again, Tim. You have a wonderful day. Aloha. Woo!
Yeah.
So that was it. That was Tim Hurley with the Honolulu Star Advertiser.
Oh, right.
How you doing?
Good.
Bro, I got staph, bro, from the ordeal.
Pounding that garlic? What are you doing?
I just grinded some garlic. Yeah. So then I was filming this too. It's going right now still. I was going to get some Bluetooth, that kind. Shout out. But, so this is going to be the video that follows up YouTube. So what we got is, we got a system in place, proprietary system in place, that in about 25 minutes, we could take any video we want, put in the key words, and we've boosted that to the top of the search engine.
Cool.
So that's what this video is going to go do, because we got the video up there for Maui Mayor of him getting blasted. And everybody's like,
everyone wants to see that.
You did this. You know what I mean? You're an idiot. Oh, you're awesome. But who is this guy? Mm-hmm. So, hey world, this is me. So that's the video. It's 55 minutes long. So